Hey everybody, welcome to this little mock that I made. This is my version of a supercar. It's not meant to be anything in particular, just a general one, and though there are definitely things that you can see and say, oh hey, he was inspired by this one. Yeah, some of that's probably true, though I will say I'm not really a car person, so if in the comments you say it looks like something, I'll just believe you because I don't really know a ton. But I really wanted to push myself, and so in it I designed a 3-speed transmission using only 1-to-1 gear ratios, using only 16 teeth based gears. I'll show you that later on in the video, but first I just want to kind of go through some of the outside details. The front of the vehicle is actually built with an even based style, and so you can see here there's one module and another module, and it kind of branches out from here, so everything from this section under is even. Sorry, that filled it out. And for those that are familiar with Technic, you know that Technic is typically odd-based. What this allowed me to do actually was to get a little bit of chamfer here, because if this was to be straight up, look like that, but I thought that would look very, very boxy. So on the even based, there's a little bit of a gap, and so I was able to just kind of close it off. Doesn't add a whole lot, but I feel like what it adds is just enough. I have also included 2 headlights on either side, as well as a turning signal and the front grille. Rotating this around, you can see, though I do have some holes right here, it's just because of these big crane tires. But I have right here these air intakes, which are very, very similar to the Audi R8. That's something I really wanted, and actually I had to use half building technique right here, so using these half beams or whatever, because this is actually 1.5 modules above this base, and this bow piece fits perfectly inside the fender section at that point. And it's just the tiniest little slit. There, you can see it right there. Going to the back now. Everyone that showed this to said it reminded them of a Corvette, so I guess that's what this is based off of now, is a Corvette. Again, I'm not really a car guy. I know the Audi R8, but that's pretty much the extent. So, the back though, I really wanted to find something that would be aggressive, but also would create a very low profile, which is hard because I'm using these big, thick crane tires. But I decided to come up with this. So I have the rear lights, and then also the brakes and the turning signals. I have some vents up here, and then I don't know if you can tell. Yeah, right here on the other side, I actually have some other details, which are just studs, upside down. That's how that works. Then the exhaust pipes, which actually control functions. I'll show that later on, though. Another thing that I wanted to do was to continue with this Lamborghini look. Another thing that I really wanted to do was to give this a streamlined profile, or at least as best as I could with parts and cranes. So I created these holes right here, and used these long bow pieces, and I tried really hard to make them as low as I can to really minimize the gap everywhere except for, of course, right there. And the back is probably one of my favorite surface details. There's the other side, and there's the front view again. Something else that I really wanted to do was to make it to where you can see the engine, so you can actually lift this whole entire section up. You rotate this towards you. So if I can get some of the light to go in there, there you go. So I have some pipes coming from underneath the engine heads, and they go suggestively towards the air intakes, and the pipes actually go all the way through under here, through underneath these cylinder heads. And if I was to rotate the wheels, well, currently only 3 are going because it's angled. If I was to angle it straight, there you go, all 6 pistons are moving, and you can see the differential in there too. So right now, this is the drivetrain for the 3-speed transmission that I designed using only 1-to-1 gearing ratios. How it works is the differential right here gets transferred from this tan 20-tooth gear through a series of small 8-tooth gears, and then gets redirected. It's actually shifted upward. I don't know if you can see there's another gear tread at the top. so that allows the gearbox to be at a different height compared to the drivetrain, or to the differential, my bad. And so this axle that is rotating is really only rotating this gear and the driving ring right here. Everything else is in consequence of those two things. The only thing that this driving ring controls is whether a gear is spinning in one direction and the other, or not spinning. You can see right in here I have these beams, and so when I rotate this, and you can actually hear 3 of the 6 engine heads move, but that's how they are moved, is with this. So I want to show you what it looks like when I shift it. So this currently is the first speed, which has a 3-to-1 ratio. So this is the second speed, which has a 2-to-1 ratio. And then this is the third speed, which has a 1-to-1 gear ratio. So I'll go back down as well. So let me get that one. And this. Important to note as well is the constant rotation of the driving ring and of the red differential that you can see just right here. The 2 exhaust pipes on the back actually control 2 different functions. So this bottom one, which I'll show you from a different angle, but I just want you to see the path, goes through these 2 universal joints and then goes right past the gearbox all the way up here towards this, and actually does control the steering. And it does it with a technique like this, which is actually based off the Lego Technic. I believe it was the Corvette or something like that. And it was a $50 set, so you'll know which one it is. It's orange, but that was what it was based off of. So there's no gears for steering. The other exhaust pipe, the passenger side one, you can tell it's rotating here, goes through these universal joints and goes right past the differential and goes up here to these gears. And what that does, I don't know if you can see, just right over here in this area, you can see some things are moving. That is actually controlling the pistons. I have a blue gear in the middle, which is just an idler gear. And there you go. You can kind of see, if I move this out of the way, you can see that there's the base of the piston right there. So the door opening function can actually be seen when you lift up the hood. There is a little bit of space right over here, for I guess some luggage or whatever, though when the door function is activated it no longer is present. But I will keep this up just for right now, that way you guys can see how this works. So on the other side, you have to first unlock the doors, and then you can grab the exhaust pipe, and then the passenger side exhaust pipe that I showed you earlier, and rotate it. Now what's happening is I'm having linear motion with this, how it's just going straight on its axes, being turned into this rotary motion. And so it actually connects them both together, and what it is right here is an axle, so I can show you from this view instead. There you go. So right where this brown axle is, it connects from one side to the other, so all the way across, and it causes the doors to be lifted. Then they rotate into place. With the doors lifted up, you get a better view of the 2 bucket seats that I made. Though, I mean, of course, it's all black, so it makes it very hard to see in general. Though you get the idea. There's the shifter, and it does work, as before seen. And then the steering wheel, which is not connected to anything, and they had a little bit of a suggestion of a dash. And then there's even a little area underneath here where you can put some things as well. Having removed the wheel, you can see just some of the building techniques that I used. Again, beginning right here, some of the half building that you can see just from inside there. I used a bunch of different parts that I'm not really familiar with because I've only been in Technic for less than a year. But something I really wanted to do was to challenge myself and to really build with a lot of new techniques and a lot of new pieces, which thankfully these cranes have plenty of. So over here, so the first speed, go to the second speed, and then for the third speed. There you go. And let's see if I can actually get this to work. So see if you guys can hear it. So the first speed, which is 3-to-1 ratio. Flipping it. So that's it. It's 2-to-1 ratio. And then third speed is the 1-to-1 ratio. So we'll go back through it all. Start at the first one. The turning radius for this model is actually not that fantastic. In fact, it's pretty bad. Which just kind of comes from the long wheelbase. For a size comparison, here's a Lego minifigure. There you go. So, not even as tall as the wheel, completely dwarfed. So then we're off to the side. And then, I don't know how I'm going to get this one in. But here's the Lego Technic Ducati. So, rotate this. Again, I don't know if it can be seen, but well, and the Ducati in and of itself is a big Lego model anyway. But there you go. So for those of you that do have the Ducati, it's bigger than that. The dimensions of this thing are actually quite impressive. So it's about 15 inches long, or about 38 centimeters. The width is just over 5.5 inches. I would say probably about 15 centimeters. And the height is 4 inches, or about 10 centimeters. The model itself is very heavy, and despite that, like I showed earlier, it's very, very strong and robust. It's very sturdy. I don't feel like anything is weak on this model. I mean, you can adjust the side view mirror, so maybe that's weak because, I don't know, that's just how they are, I guess. But really everything else is very, very strong, very, very sturdy. Something that I really wanted to, because I know that in Lego sets, that's one of the things that they have to do, is they have to make sure that everything is sturdy and strong. All 3 speeds are changed through this differential. It did require for me to understand some of the basics of differentials, but essentially what you need to know is that a differential allows for these 2 gears on the outside to rotate at different speeds. This is how a car is able to turn, is the differential is receiving power, so the differential will always be rotating, but as it turns, one wheel will have to rotate slower than the other, so that allows for that to happen. You can see here, actually I have this differential as well, and this bottom gear is connected to this tire. You can tell that it's not moving, this bottom gear is, but rather the housing is moving. And the housing is moving because of this center gear. So it'll probably be easier just to look at it through right here. But how it works though is, so if this is the gear that is moving, then this gear has to compensate. And that's kind of how this works. So, well, let me bring it to the, here we go. So this is the first speed, which has a 3-to-1 ratio. So the housing is moving at a constant speed. But if you can see here, this tan beveled gear is going in the opposite direction of the housing. That tan beveled gear, the direction of it is controlled through the driving ring. So it's going right, or I guess I'll just say down, and it goes up, and then because of these gears it gets inverted, now it's going down. And then you can see here, however this gear rotates is how that inner gear will rotate. So they're both rotating down, or they're both rotating up. But when I rotate it down, it's rotating in the exact opposite direction of the housing. Well, even though the housing is still spinning and this is rotating, this middle gear needs to compensate a lot for that. And so it spins a lot faster, and it causes the output gear, so this connects to the engine, causes the output to then be increased. And it actually mathematically increases it perfectly by 3 times. Having shifted the driving ring over now towards the neutral position, This actually is in the 2-to-1 ratio. Now you can tell that sometimes, just because of friction, that this train will move. You can tell just a little bit right there. Though usually that doesn't happen. It's also just because this car is angled, and so some of the stresses are different. And but how it works though is, since the drive ring is not engaged, this axle this drivetrain is no longer moving, meaning that gear is staying still. So if I'm rotating the wheels this way, now if it was going the opposite way, you can tell that then the output would increase because this middle gear has to compensate a lot for it, because this gear is spinning the opposite direction. But when it's in neutral, since it's not spinning, it doesn't have to compensate as much. So the ratio is actually a 2-to-1. So what you're actually seeing here as well, because I'm spinning just one wheel right now, it's going through a differential right here. Everything that you're seeing is half the normal speed, because half the power is being I don't want to say wasted, but it's being transferred just to the rotation of the idler gear in the middle. Having now shifted it to first gear, we can now see what happens. So these beams are definitely moving a lot slower. Again, we'll just go all the way down so you can get an idea. So this is the 3-to-1, it's the 2-to-1 ratio, and then that is the 1-to-1 ratio. And so what's happening is the driving ring is engaged, and so it causes this inner gear to rotate at the exact same speed and direction as the housing. Now, this middle gear, I don't know if you can tell, but it's actually not rotating independent on this axis, and it's obviously rotating with the housing, like this, but it's not rotating on the axis that's there. There we go. And so it's essentially as if you have a single axle going from this gear to that gear, being redirected towards the engine. So that's how I was able to get those speeds. So there it is. This is my supercar with a 3-speed transmission gearbox using only 1-to-1 gear ratios. Again, this was made out of 3 Lego sets that I have. Description are in the comments. But essentially it's 2 cranes and an excavator, as well as some parts that I have ordered from Bricklink to make the gearbox. Oh my, I just love that back. So feel free to give a like and subscribe, as well as if you have any other suggestions for builds that you want to see or mechanisms that you want to see me explain or to implement into models, please leave them in the comments as well. Thank you, and have a great day.